So my name is Angie Nostowska, and my partner in crime is Dave Trejo, and we both work for a charter organization called I Lead Schools, and we're both at administrative level in different capacities. I also teach in a classroom as well, so I'm in the trenches as well as in administration as well. And today we will walk you through an interesting journey. So our journey will look like storytelling. If you were imagining a research, probably would be a phenomenological research where we tell you our story and then we did some thematic extrapolation so that we can show you how we came to a success over a 10-year journey. So our organization has existed for over 10 years. This will be the 11th year. And it's been a rocky road. We started off 10 years ago with just one school. Then year 2, we added second school. And year 7, we expanded to almost 11 schools and different programs. So you can only imagine what scaling and spreading does to an organization, even if everything works impeccably. There we go. So the goals for the session today are short and simple. We have 3 goals. The first one is to create a shared language of institutional change for success. What they would do, how they would do it. Then understand the importance of compassion and integrity in the restorative practices process. And the third one is look at organizational structures for success. So if you are getting away with something today, we really want you to focus on the third one. Do you clearly understand the organizational structures that we have put in place to help us success, but more so the framework that that helped us build those organizational structures? Because as we know, we all function at different geographic location, different demographics, we work with different people in different communities, so maybe those structures will not help you. But if you do understand the framework, the why behind it, then you're all set and good to go. So first we want you to get to know each other, and we're gonna bond over this quote. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. So turn to your right elbow partner or left elbow partner, introduce yourself, and what does this quote just mean to you? Thinking about where you are in the conference where you are at. So just share a few thoughts, and it's okay to get loud. Yes, of course. Welcome.
I'm not a good front row person, so.
Oh, we're not scary. We will not intimidate you.
No, I usually do that, so it's great.
We're just asking people to reflect on the quote and engage with somebody in the room.
And is your PowerPoint already uploaded?
Yes, it is. All the documents and the PowerPoint are there.
I put it on mute because of that, so you have to turn the volume on when it's
All right, and we're going to bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So there's something that I always did when I taught, which I like to do with adults too, because it seems kind of silly, but if you make it an everyday part of your pair share, it leads to accountability, because when you ask someone to share what their partner said, then in the future they realize, oh no, they're going to ask me what my partner said. I got to pay attention, and it ends up systemically, like over time, with much more richer, deeper conversations. So if anyone has a good point that a partner said, I'd like you to make sure you have their name right, and then say my wonderful partner Christine or my wonderful partner Kimberly. If you want to substitute that synonym or that adjective, for something that's a positive word, by all means, but the format should always be my wonderful partner Angie communicated that, blah, blah, blah. So are there any brave volunteers? Jody, right?
Yes.
Go for it.
So my insightful partner, Alexis, shared that she had a personal event happen in her life that she couldn't rebound with positivity in the way that she was used to, and it changed the way that she saw the people around her and understanding that they could be going through something similar.
That's beautiful. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My amazing partner, Laverne here, shared sort of a boiled down version of that quote from last session, which was, "It's hard to hate up close."
That's great. I think it's a perfect transition into our next stuff.
Yes, thank you so much. So this is who we are. If we jotted down in few sentences who we are as an organization, we inspire kids and all our employees to be free to think, inspired to lead. And we're also people of purpose, establishing a new paradigm for education. We're caring culture that values community, which contributes to a better society. Without further ado, Dave will lead you through the next section.
So just a quick note on our vernacular. If you hear us slip it in. Instead of student, teacher, principal, in school models we have learner, facilitator, director. And so that's an important part of the word choice that we use, and I do believe that semantics matter, especially when they're associated with such an outdated factory model, that if you can change the language, you can change the view just a bit. And I know sometimes when we hear that we roll our eyes, we go, God, but I tell you, words matter, and I think we can all agree with that. So as we look at organizational mindsets for change, it's a little harder to get an entire organization on the same page. You can have a great idea, put together a great slide deck, put together a great presentation, and then people will come up with the barriers immediately, and you have to know that ahead of time. One of the things that I want us to keep in mind is the social justice window. So let me just get an idea of the room. Will you raise your hand if you're in K-12 education? That's most of us. Higher education? And the minority here, other. There we go. I want to touch base with some of you people because I want to know how you're using it in other sectors of life. I think that's important for applicability. And then one more check-in. Fist to 5, 0 being this is my first conference and my district sent me, but I'm excited to find out what restorative practices is. 5, I've facilitated professional development, or I feel comfortable facilitating professional development related to restorative practices. We got a nice mix.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So for the newbies, the social discipline, social justice window is one of the most important things you're going to learn in terms of restorative practices. I think they give us IRRP gives us a cheat code and even colors the width box blue. It's pretty easy at first glance to figure out what box you want to be in. What I find is that most of us, and well-intended, especially early on in our leadership journey, are in the 4 box. I want to make my teachers' lives easier. I want to make my parents' lives easier. I want to make everyone's life easier, and we end up doing things for them. People that live in the 4 box, and I'm trying to break out of that box currently. People that live in the 4 box are busy all day and have no time to check things off their to-do list because they're too busy helping other people check things off their to-do list. One thing that I am going to lobby IRP to change really is this control. Control is an ugly word to me. So I leave it up there because that's how it is, and this isn't my original idea. Sorry, I'm changing it on mine, not that one. I changed it to accountability. I think people appreciate accountability. They like when they have to complete a difficult project that took a lot of work. If you never hold them accountable positively and acknowledge it, then it's like, hey, what the heck, all that work. It's the whole problem with the outdated model of homework. Homework that is just random worksheets that get turned in on Monday and have no bearing on instruction. And then on Tuesday, the same thing is there, and Wednesday. And the kids figure out 2 things. 1, the teacher makes me feel like garbage if I show up without the homework. And 2, they don't even look at it. So accountability is something that people actually like. They like that feedback, and so that's one thing to keep in mind. Sorry, thank you, Angie. I think that'll be our cue. That's how
Yes.
we'll work together. So, there's something that I want to talk about called the savior complex, otherwise known as intimate colonialism. Intimate colonialism is in the 4 box. When you are other people's problems and you helping them and giving them good advice, and like, I give good advice, I'm great like that. That's you finding low-hanging purpose in other people's misery. But it feels really damn good. Like, it feels really good to help someone work through an issue, or even on a bigger scale, a community. I think the best way to illustrate this is, I'm going back just to, on my own. So you can stay one more? Sorry, thank you. On my own journey, I opened a school in Pacoima in California about 4 years ago. And I had the opportunity to do it before I was ready to be a school leader. I went from principal to school leader, and my brother used to refer to me as the Justin Bieber of education, because a YouTube video changed my life. I gave a talk at the Gates Foundation that I was fortunate enough to give that went up on YouTube, and I got job offers. And I wasn't ready to take them, but I also knew that if my kids came and they were like, hey, I got accepted to Stanford, or I got accepted to MIT, and I'm not ready to leave my family, I'd say, go. So I had to lead that by example. And so when we opened that school, we brought like-minded individuals, and we said, let's be the school that the community needs. And so that's what we set out to do. It wasn't until this past summer, and after restorative practices training, that I had this epiphany, and it hit me like a brick wall. The mission is completely wrong. The mission and the vision is completely wrong. Like, I live and breathe the mission and vision of the school. I'm there at 7 a.m. I leave at 10 p.m. I do 2 things well, I hope. One is I'm a hardworking leader. I don't want to say that I'm an efficient leader yet. I'm a hardworking leader, and I'm a husband. Those are the only 2 things in life. I suck at everything else. I'm a terrible brother, I'm a terrible son, I'm a terrible friend, I'm terrible at everything else. I recognize that and understand that. But I realized that the mission and the vision was wrong. Because in order for us to succeed at a mission and vision of to be the school that the community needs, it means that the community has to need you. The community has to have a deficiency. And so when that hit me, it was like, whoa, our entire school model is in the 4 box. And we need to get away from there. Changed my life this year. And one of those things that is hard for us in education sometimes, especially if you grew up and you're trying to do something along the lines of be the teacher you needed when you were a child, or you grew up with a lot of childhood trauma. My whole life story in terms of childhood trauma is a whole different thing, and if you want, type my name into YouTube, you'll find it. It won't be David Trejo, it'll be Dave. My name's actually Dave, not David. That's a whole different story, but often it gets put down as David Trejo, or sometimes it's Danny Trejo. And then people are utterly disappointed when Machete does not walk into the professional development session. But I'm a believer that not everything happens for a reason, but you can put purpose into everything that happens. And so when you do that and you put that your own life pain, your siblings' life pain, your mother's life pain into it, then you want to be needed. It is really addicting to be needed. And to say, you know what? That's why I went through everything as a kid, so that I could be here for this family. And it's utterly addicting, but it's dangerous. And you have to recognize it. And trust me when I say it feels better to build that capacity. When I get messages from kids that say, hey, I was going to send you a message last week, but then I said, no. In my own head, I said, what would Trejo say? And I did it myself without talking to you. And I love that. Like, to know that they can come to you for support, but that they don't need you, is something that you wanna look into. And it's important that it's happening at every step of the way. So, tips and pitfalls. The expectations must apply to all members of the community. All members. Whether it's a dress code, this applies to all policies. If you tell the girls that they can't wear a skirt above their knees, and the teachers are wearing skirts here, they're gonna say, hey, what's going on, right? And the same thing happens with paradigm shifts and policy shifts. That if the executive directors and the founders of your organization, your CEOs, your superintendents are not living and breathing this, it will not succeed. There have to be measures at every step. along every step of the way, which is what's beautiful about what Angie's going to get into, because she talks about compassion and the purposeful practice of compassion at every level of the organization, so that we can see that everyone is involved in it. If not, you get into that do as I say, right? Not as I do. When you are doing this and you are shifting paradigms, there will be emotional moments. People will push back. If you don't feel human emotion, you might be a sociopath. However, if you act emotionally, I need to send this damn email right now, you're probably going to end up apologizing afterwards. Emotional leads to apologies. Having emotion makes you human. And then don't say, I don't care. I don't care what you're going to say, we're doing this anyways. All people heard was, I don't care. That one is hard to recover from. And then avoid universal statements, whether you're in a classroom. This whole class is a hot mess. Because then there's two kids in the back that are like, and then you keep doing that enough and they're like, they don't even pay attention to me. But that happens in organizations often. I don't want to say that universal statements are never true, because then, that would be a universal statement. But they're rarely, rarely true. So try to use data with that. And as you shift paradigms within an organization, there's gonna be venting, I guarantee it. There's gonna be venting. You wanna make sure that you're venting horizontally, not vertically. Vertically, you throw people under the bus. This way, people think, man, my boss talks a lot of smack about people. And then it builds distrust.
I would add just one more, and yeah, you can ask a question. Do not ever, as a leader especially, or initiative changer, use the deficiency model, what Dave was talking about. This doesn't work, that doesn't work, this doesn't work, that's why we're doing this. Because the second you're gonna start focusing on the deficiency, that is what people remember. It's the same thing with people, like you never want to hear your bad characteristics. Try to think about building capacity. Try to think of few things that are really darn good in your organization, in your class or in your school, and say, because we rock at this, here is the new structure that we're implementing. But we're gonna start with that one bright thing. And also, especially with restorative practices or organizational changes to move towards something bigger and better, find the two rock stars that you can see that they're living and breathing it, and put them on a pedestal. Let them share their practices, let them share their successes. It's easier to build upon that, something that someone is doing within, than bring external consultants and show how someone is doing it from without the organization. So think about building on capacity rather than on deficiency model. Every time that you speak, it's a completely different language, and it often is going to make you like really pause and think about what you were about to say, so that you can shift the mindset into, oh shoot, I figure out a positive. Sorry,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Could you say that quote again about not everything happens for a reason?
I don't believe that everything happens for a purpose, but you can put a purpose into everything that happens.
Thank you.
We can talk about that afterwards. I talked extensively about that. So what restorative practice is, yes, just there on that one. You can go to the next one. What restorative practice is not, and I no matter what presentation I give, if it's related to RP, I do talk about this, because people think that it's a prescription sometimes. We're gonna prescribe it, we're gonna implement it, and everything will be fixed, problem solved. It does not work that way. It is a culture. It is a culture. And if you don't have things like circles or the restorative practices continuum in effect before you need it, when you need it, it will be useless to you, and you'll blame restorative practices for your lack of proper implementation. Now, before that, Angie. Before moving on, one other thing that I want to lobby IRP to change is I want to add things to this continuum. I think this continuum is beautiful, and if you're brand new to it, there's effective statements, effective questions, impromptu conference, group, and formal conference. The more you have of things on the right, the more of a problem you have. You want to have more effective statements, more effective questions, and not so many formal conferences. If not, you may need some support in implementing restorative practices. However, restorative practices does not replace best practices. That's what I would put before this. If I am a classroom instructor and Michael and Laverne are over there chatting it up and it's driving me crazy, I can either say, are you two being serious right now? and that puts them into a defensive mode. And so when they respond disrespectfully, I'm like, okay, now we need restorative practices because there was repair, there was harm done. But I set them up to create harm, is what I did, right? When best practices instruction-wise, if you're a teacher, is to continue talking, make eye contact, or just come over with proximity. They get quiet, you move on. The next time you come, you just tap on their thing. It's a lot, redirection with dignity is universal, like designed for management of people. Even if you're not in a school setting, if you're upset that somebody missed the deadline and you send a condescending email, you've put them in a defensive mode that now they have to reply to you. And if you've set them up to reply emotionally, and then people are gonna have to apologize on all ends. It does not replace best practices. The thing I would put in front of that though is relationships. People do not want to repair relationships that they don't care about. So you can have this circle, but it's like, I don't give a crap about repairing a relationship with you, so what's up? Like, what are we doing here? What do I have to say to get out of this? It's not a quick fix by any means at all, and it does not substitute relationship. Relationship is the most foundational thing you have. The more you do these, the less you'll need those. And so that's one thing that I want to keep in mind. The other thing that restorative practices is, they shifted it from justice to practices, right? Because we wanted to be more proactive and not just a reaction. So restorative practices makes more compassionate citizens. And so what Angie's going to get into right now is that purposeful practice of the compassion muscle at every level. So I will turn it over to Angie.
Absolutely. Anyone has a question? Already uploaded. You have the entire PowerPoint on the session. You have the documents it's already uploaded, and all the links that you can see here that we will not necessarily click on are there for you, because there's a lot of beautiful practices, but it's only 50-minute sessions. So how do we do it? So here is an example of organization-wide that it's not top-down. We went horizontally and vertically. We're going to start with the practices so that you can see the point of the structures that we put in place. So first we're going to start with the evidence, and then we're going to tell you here is what structures we put in place so that this effectively works. So at the beginning, our conversation on compassion integrity has been a long journey. We've been proponents for social emotional learning since day one. Our two founders, Dawn and Amber, they're both very strong women. Since they opened the school, it was just one room school with few kids to begin with, and then spreading into an entire organization. They were joking there, the female versions of Steve Jobs, they want to put dent in education. And the real dent is working with social emotional to actually increase academic rigor and everything else that's happening. So how did we do that? We have attracted a lot of players. First we started playing with global group, which was comprised of the International Baccalaureate Program schools and people, and their headquarters in The Hague, the MIT University, also Penn State, Canada University, and there are a bunch of other universities. So why did they come to us? They came to us to ask a simple question. Kids come to us not prepared. Something is wrong. The link is somewhere broken. They seem like they're stellar kids. We choose impeccable resumes and application. They start first semester and they cannot survive. Something is wrong. So we said, here's what you are overlooking. You're not looking at the child as a child. You're only looking at their academics and their example, whether they're exemplary students in terms of academics. So then they backtrack and they're like, okay, now we're open to listen. What is happening? So we created a group, and we have met in different spaces. We have met at MIT, we have met at The Hague, actually, with a lot of different educators interested in spreading the compassion integrity. Compassion integrity is simply, it's not just feeling empathy, it's not just building compassion capacity in kids and educators themselves, but also knowing what that means. When I actually feel empathy for someone, means that I deeply understand where the problem is coming from. I deeply understand the causes for the problem, and I want to be proactive about it, not because it looks good on a resume, but because I know what's under the iceberg. So we started organization-wide implementing the restorative practices circles, but starting with our administrators. We said if we want to bring a new initiative, we cannot just say, okay, you all got trained, now go and do this in your schools. Well, it doesn't work. So what do? We shifted our professional development completely, the way that we do our professional development. We're project-based learning schools, we're all about social emotional, and it's equal part of our academics. How do we do that? Well, over here you see a huge theater that was completely empty. All that our employees knew, 300 and plus. So we had from our charter management organization administration to all our principals, which are the directors, leadership, community, parents, everyone who is involved in our organization, all the way to teachers and assistants. So we have them all in one room. All that they knew was, for this professional development, you need to bring a box, something to work with, something to color with, just simple bare minimum. So it was a simple project where they were partner up with people that they do not necessarily work with, people from different schools partner up in a group, and they had to build together a shelter that will feel comfortable for everyone. And over here, you also have the handout for the professional development that you can click on at your own time. But as you can see, our professional development revolved around restorative practices and around building compassion integrity within ourselves. Because as Dave was talking earlier, those relationships have to begin with ourselves. If we do not know ourselves, if we do not feel comfortable with who we are and sharing that, we cannot expect to sit in a circle and facilitate a circle, or go and monitor someone as a principal or superintendent and say, you're not doing this or that, if I don't know exactly how it feels on a personal level. So this year, we even went a step further. We let our directors, which are the principals, we gave them kind of loose guidelines for our professional development, which is a week before school starts, of restorative practices infused advisory. So each director, each principal had to spend approximately 1 hour with their staff infusing restorative practices into an advisory program. So we say we want to have a stellar advisory program, but we have never paused to think about, how can we infuse restorative practices? How would that look like? Well, let the directors experience it and let the teachers experience it with them together so that they can calibrate what works and what doesn't work for their particular school, instead of all of us training them all the time.
Can I make one quick note on
Yes.
that? Is that as you introduce new initiatives, I've never met anyone in education, really in anyone in business, that says, I have so much time at work, I need new things to do. You need to build in that time from the outset so that you're setting them up for success. So that the cognitive engagement is the path of least resistance. You want to do that whether they're kids or whether they're their fellow staff members, because everything is exponential, right? And if you don't get the buy-in at that first initial outburst of exponential, it's not going to spread with efficacy.
Absolutely. So that was an example on a leadership level. Now we're going to go down the pipeline of schools. So first we're going to start with an elementary school example. So organization-wide, we did this project called the Compassion Integrity, under the Compassion Integrity umbrella. And we just went with simple driving question. And for the non-project-based learning school, the driving question, it's kind of like the inquiry line when you start off a project. So our driving question was, who am I when no one is looking, for all the different grade levels. And here is the stand that they took. So they weren't given specific parameters, but you saw they were participating in pre-work, they were participating in some research, they were actively engaged in professional development. So they had all that background, and now they have the freedom to build their own project, whatever they want to do. So for our little ones in one of our particular schools, they started off with, this is grade 3 and 4, and if someone is familiar with the content standards, they were working on measurements, they were designing blueprints. First they were looking at climate changes, the economy, and they were focusing in geography on the land formation. So they were choosing their favorite land formation, and then they were designing where they want to live. Then they would design a blueprint for their house. And then it was towards the end of the project. So the facilitators, which are the teachers, stopped and they're like, well, what will our kids do with this? It's like, is there any compassion, or is there really any understanding about where people live and how their life changes based on where they live? So they decided to take it to the next step. They met Elvis Summers, who is an amazing man that builds tiny houses for veterans. He came to the school, spoke to the kids, and they're like, oh my God, we're ready. We know how to design a blueprint. Can we do that? He's like, yeah, if you're on board, I'm on board. So without me talking about it, I'm gonna let you just see this short video, which is literally 2 minutes, that our kids and Elvis Summers are talking about.
Just given the house to Abraham, and he's checking it out. I first started.
What happened?
I've just given the house to Abraham, and he's checking it out.
I think we might have to play it from the actual computer if everyone's quiet like it's a church or a library.
Big room, they're secure and safe and warm. There's a smoke detector, solar power. Today we are building a much larger tiny house than the standard houses I build, and we're building it with the 4th and 5th grade class of the local charter school. Kids are the next generation, the next leaders, and it's really important for them to be involved. They're the future of humanity. Our homeless problem in Los Angeles is skyrocketing. To see a person that is completely lost hope, to see the look on their face when you hand them a key to their own place, it's indescribable. There's a big difference between a handout and a hand up. Helping people is the right thing to do.
A project completely funded by GoFundMe, completely, from zero up. And I'm sure you don't need more explanation of how did the engagement increase, what are these kids doing, and this year you can
And one of the key issues with that is every generation has their get off my lawn, what they complain about the next generation, right? And we complain about this, this. And with this in their hand and in their pocket, we're gonna end up with one of two types of adults when they grow up with this. Kids that think they are the sun, they are geocentric, everything rotates around them. I want a song, I type it in. And so you end up with kids that look at a workout video and they're like, I did 12 minutes of P90X, where are my muscles? It's like, oh, it takes a little more discipline than that. Or you're gonna end up with people that realize there's nothing holding them back because the information is here to help them take that first step. And so if you can help get that, and while they're young, building that compassion so they can see the impact they have on other people, it makes the world less about them. And I think that's part of being a better
human.
human.
Like an investment in a long run. So this year on their own, they started participating in a campaign called Let's Be Better Humans. And it's a traveling bus. It's a national bus that travels around, and people have an opportunity to hop on and jot down a goal. How can I this year exemplify being a better human? But it was just interesting to observe the kids when they got on that bus, like the feelings and the emotions that they went through reading someone else's messages. It was very personable just because of their experience last year. So here we are, example of a middle school. Again, the same question, who am I when no one is looking? But they decided to take it a little bit differently. So content skills covering, they were using world history and ancient civilization to build their own games of life. So how can I spread what happened in history, looking at the trends right now by building a game of life and actually helping other people learn about it in an authentic way? Social emotional, there were character building, agency, purpose, grid, implementation of the 7 habits. And for restorative practices, capacity building, the kids were centering around building their own mandalas and understanding what does it mean for me to be centered. So as you all know, middle school is when we are in complete loss of identity, searching for everyone and everything until we realize this is who we are. So for them, it was really exploring who am I by understanding the background of mandalas and what does centeredness mean. And when I get shifted off balance, how do I go back to establishing some sort of equilibrium in my life, so that now each one of them has an actual tool on how to go back. And over there at your own time, I don't want to take up time, all the examples, 1, 2, 3, 4, compassion experience in Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley, it's initiatives that the kids brought to our school. So those are all videos. They talk about their project, what they learn, and they respond to the driving question, who am I when no one is looking right now as I've completed the project. And also we managed to bring also a traveling experience. It's completely free again. It's called Compassion Experience, and you can go ahead and check it out. It's basically what the people do is they bring 2 trailers, and when you walk into the trailer, it's a simulation like you're walking in a kid's life in underprivileged areas of the world. So we had in Santa Clarita, we had from Kenya and Nigeria experiences. One trailer was kids from Kenya, one from Nigeria, and the other one was Africa, and I don't remember for AV, for Lancaster, what was the other one. But you walk into their living room, and with audio tape, you listen to when they wake up, what they do. Then you walk into another room, it's their actual school, and you see everything that they do in school. You go into another room, you see their playground and outdoor activities. So it really helps kids get into the shoes of someone else and experience life through someone else's life. On a high school level, it was very interesting because this was actually our partnership with MIT. For the high school level, we decided to use simulations designed by MIT, used by Barack Obama right before we used it. They're completely free again. It's called a climate simulation. So we did a pre and post video of the kids, and in between we integrated restorative practices, compassion integrity tools, so everything to help the kids understand and grow compassion integrity. So in the beginning, for the climate simulation, you are a UN representative and you are a constituent of representative of a nation. You come to the UN climate simulation and you argue for or against, and you are just given a scenario. So the first video, kids were falling off chairs, kids were falling asleep. They had no idea what's happening. They could care less about what's happening with another country. Fast forward a year later, only 6-7 months later, so we were doing everything. We were doing history through the iceberg principles, icebergs of cultures, iceberg of history. We were doing mental models to understand mental models, perceptions. We were doing behavior over time, tracking change, and how does everyone else is affected by it. And most importantly, we're learning about what does a constituent mean. When I go to a UN climate simulation as a representative, who else am I representing from my country? So fast forward to the actual one, we did it more solemnly. We all dressed up in suits and ties and everything like that. It was really interesting to explore the depth and the meaning of the conversations. United States was going to China saying, you know what, India is underdeveloped. They're just going through industrialization. We cannot say all of a sudden just don't use fossil fuels and everything else. We have to do something to help them build up. And in the beginning, they could have cared less. So you can also see the examples when you click on the links. And then finally, we're coming into the organizational structures for success that we have put in place. So I'm going to briefly go through those, but for you, you have a little cheat sheet on the actual site. And it's called, under files, you're going to see organizational structures for success.
It'll give you the name of each of these collabs and then the purpose behind them.
Yes. So we wanted to implement changes and we wanted to scale changes, or we wanted what we already do to do it better and to be truthful to implementation and also follow with accountability. So you cannot just do it by sending people around and making sure everything is happening. So we started designing structures in our organization that are very purposeful. So the first one is every single month, our directors come and meet together for something called School Directors Collaborative.
And I'm sure that any organization that you work in probably has something similar. Principals meet once or twice a month, and the principal's never happy about being off campus, and all sorts of things are going on. The important word in there is collaborative, because we can check in, and that's when you're honest, and that's where the venting horizontally happens, because you don't want to vent at school. You're the, you set the tone. Just like the teacher sets the tone in the classroom. I always say, if you're in a classroom and 1 or 2 kids are off task, it's an individual thing. If it's 5 to 7, there may be a protocol or a procedure you need to fix. If it's the whole class, it's you. It's not them. And I say that with all due respect. Just because you worked hard on that lesson doesn't mean it's cognitively engaging. Same at the leadership level. That has to go up though. If one of my teachers is struggling, I need to support them. If all my teachers are struggling, that's a reflection of me. And the higher you go up, you're a regional director, you're a superintendent. If all your principals are struggling and you're like, I just need new ones, then that issue is just going to keep perpetuating. In the school director collaborative, you have that accountability with peers of like, how is restorative practices going at your school? How's PBIS? How's the social emotional learning? Do your kids know what the 7 habits are? Or are they just posted on the wall? And when you're able to get that going, you're also able to go through the restorative practice model there. If something happened, you're like, hey, you know what? I had an issue with the teacher. So you go through the questions. What happened? What were you thinking? And it allows us to really live it at the school director model, at school director level. One of those things that I would recommend, if you have not been on the IIRP website, they have cards for $10. They have them in Spanish, they have them in English. It's the best thing you can do because it has the questions printed. When I have conflict at school, I like to give the 2 cards to the kids and say, let me know when you're ready to answer those incomplete sentences. And when I say what happened, and they go, I don't know. Okay, I'll be back. Time is the best interrogator. It breaks everyone down. Eventually, they'll get there. But that school director collaborative, we're able to do something similar, live it, appreciate it, find the value, and then bring it on back.
On more leadership level, each month we have something called Leadership Connections. Leadership Connections is where all the leaders from the organization come together, and we have 4 cohorts because we have a lot of leaders. So we have 4 cohorts. Each group is between 12 to 16 people, and this is a time when for an entire day we unplug. No computers, no cell phones. And we also focus on personal growth. What we do and what we discuss, it's a small closed circle of trust, and we do things like Brene Brown, Simon Sinek. So we focus on redefining our practices and who we are so that we can build capacity within ourselves so that we can go out there and be better leaders. Because as we know, when you go to a principal or superintendent level, you feel so alone. You feel like no one else understands or everyone else is judging your position, and it's really hard to feel that personal growth. And you're also afraid to admit that I'm at a point of stagnation. Well, this is the time actually when we focus on ourselves.
And the important thing to note about that, if you attempt anything like that, is that everyone that walks into that room is going to walk in begrudgingly. They're going to be like, how do I turn off my phone? I have boom, boom, boom. Everyone has that list of things. Who you choose to facilitate that, we're very fortunate in our facilitators in that they're deeply engaging and they're good storytellers. Storytelling is such an underrated skill. I believe it should be a standard by 5th grade, and then again at 8th grade, and then before you graduate high school, you should be able to tell your story. That's how you find a romantic partner. That's how you get a job. When you come home, your kids come in, you want to hear stories, you tell them stories of your day. Like, it's an underrated skill, but that leadership connection is an opportunity if you have the right facilitators to break down those barriers and let them know that the best thing they can do is build capacity within other people so that they're not needed. Because much like myself, for example, when I'm in those meetings, I sneak away at my phone because I think that my school needs me, but the truth is that I probably need them more than they need me.
All right, and here's an example of a few other collaboratives that we have put in place. We have facilitator, which is our teachers. We call them facilitators. We give them a specific time of the month where they all come together and meet together and they discuss initiatives, and then they share with their principal or school director so that we can establish trends for how do we change things around. We have learner collaboratives. We allow our learners once a month to get together from each grade level and collaborate on initiatives. We have parent collaborative, very important, also discussing parent initiatives, parent involvement, and how do we get a buy-in or how do we move something out, and so on. We have central office collaboratives where they come together, and they're purposefully, as Dave said earlier, called collaboratives because none of these are kind of like top-down meetings or perfectly set stagnant agenda. All of them are more organic. It's really time to get together and collaborate on all these. Then we have leadership residents, which is assistant principals. We have student support, all of the people that support special ed programs and teams. We have home study collaborative office managers. And you see all the huge initiatives that we have, like we are project-based learning school. We have a PBL team collaborative because we cannot accept the fact that we have just 3 trainers and they function district-wise. Each school site has their own coaches or representatives that once a month come to this collaborative. We talk about best practices, we talk about troubleshooting, and then we go back to our sites and help where we need. If I'm stuck and I'm the PBL coach for my school, then I come to the team and I ask help, and then someone else comes from another school to help us out. But that's why it's beautiful that it's a collaborative process. We're also introducing new learning management systems. I know probably a bunch of you have gone through a lot of them. Well, we are rock stars. We have gone through 7 of them so far. So in the past 2 years, we have piloted Novari learning management system, and what we realized is the reason why all the others have quote unquote failed, it's because we have never gotten together as an organization to have a key point person from each school to not put out fires as there is a fire, but to prevent it like in restorative practices. So that we have a safe space to ask the questions, how is it going, what's working, what's not, and so on. We also have Math for Deeper Engagement Collaborative. We have Parent and University. We offer it every other week to the schools or once a month where parents come and learn about project-based learning, restorative practices, really everything that makes us who we are and have the opportunity to ask questions.
Really, when it comes to social emotional learning, if you haven't gotten the parents' investment, you're working a lot harder than you need to. The way that I advertise restorative practices when I have those sessions is if everything's going well with your kid and you never argue at home, stay home. If you struggle a little bit, come in and we're gonna give you some strategies that you can walk away with.
And we also, the last one is student ambassadors. These are kids that are kind of like a student body. They're there for every event that we have. They're there for tours. They know our schools inside out. Usually they're kind of like our young adults representatives for our organization. And you can go ahead and see the handout that's over there. And if you ever have any questions, we will leave our business cards over here. You can ask us any questions. Since we're at the closing of the session, we would like to do this again. So the goals were we create a shared language for institutional change for success. So did we all understood how did we do it? What does it mean to introduce institutional change? Understand the importance of compassion and integrity in the restorative practices process. How and did we manage to do that? And then the one more most important thing that we said for your takeaway was, did you see and do you understand the structures for success? So this is one of our school directors uses this kind of like a standard procedure. It's amazing. Her program is called Empowered Generations, and it's for parent and pregnant teens. So at the beginning of every day, she does a circle called Power Up. Stand-up meeting, all of the staff just goes really fast to kind of like what's on the docket, what are you doing, where am I mentally today, what am I prepared for, and every afternoon they do a quick 10-minute power down. What were the goals for today, what did we do, kind of like the highlights for the day. So turn to your elbow partner again, share at least one big takeaway from the session, and did you change or add meaning to the phrase organizational change for success? So again, just a few minutes, turn to whoever you want, and it can be triads, it's okay.
How are you? Good.
just because lunch is on the docket and I don't want you to be too late in the line, can I just get one wonderful, fantastic partner share out, or one person frame what their fantastic, wonderful partner said? Is there anything brilliant? Any brilliant takeaways? No, I think we're hungry. So we have contact information up here. We have our work emails. I have my public speaking website that, full disclosure, went active about a week ago, so it's not fully done. Some of the stuff says let's eat instead of let's talk, because I took a chef's template off Squarespace. Right here, this article is available as a PDF on the files, and it's also, that link right there is a 10 leadership and relationship lessons that restorative practices taught me, 10 quick bullet points that I wrote that I think are super helpful. And then there's 2 ways to get feedback. There's one within the app that we're sure that they'll send and just aggregate to us at some point, but there's also the tiny URL that we set up so that we'll get that feedback immediately. It does ask for your email address and title if you want to be super anonymous and just invent one.
Be creative.
At restorativepractices.com, whatever that fake email will be. Thank you for your time.
And we're here if anyone has questions. We just don't want to keep everyone who wants to go to lunch.
I've got business cards up here, and she's got business cards up here.
Yeah, business cards are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.